Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Three Nerds in a Podcast. Today we will be talking about our top 2 picks for discontinued TV shows. I'm Trey.
I'm Tony.
I'm John.
And John, let's start with you.
Why me first?
Because I said, go. Your turn.
Alright. My first pick. Ended this year. I was super disappointed. But the following wasn't there as a general audience in the United States. It was Defiance. It was a very well done show based on, the makeup was done well, the story was done right. The story of Defiance is alien races, several different alien races from a different planet came to Earth to terraform it to make it a new planet to live on. And it didn't work. Half of the Earth got terraformed or whatever. And then there was a war, and then people in Defiance decided to defy both of their leaders and stop fighting. That's why it's called Defiance. Defiance is based in St. Louis, in the New World, but it's in the remains of St. Louis. The arch is still standing, and so it's a really well done show. The makeup and how everything looked was fantastic. It had all your usual, TV problems. All the effects weren't that great. They didn't have the movie budget of whatever, but it was just it encompassed you in this new world. Even though it was still Earth, it felt like a completely different planet.
So how long did the show go on for? I never watched it.
Yeah, I haven't even heard of it, really.
Yeah.
It was on the Sci-Fi Channel. I think it ran, if I'm correct, it was either 3 or 4 seasons, if I remember correctly.
Okay.
But in how it ended, because the thing is, they canceled the show, the fans weren't there, but for me, I really liked it.
So what stood out to you the most with this show? What made it stand out that it was your top pick for discontinued TV shows?
The looks and how attention to detail it was. There are very few shows, especially with as many different creatures and stuff like that. There's a new one that was a new show just coming out was Shannara Chronicles on MTV, which is really weird to say because it's on MTV. But how attention to detail things were, the makeup, the looks of characters, and how every single race had their different looks and their different qualities. And the story was there. And it was different. And it was just the attention to detail. I like that. One of the biggest things in TV shows is the attention to detail.
Okay.
And that was there for me. And but like I said, it was a really good TV show. It ran its course. And I think they ended it very well, with the main character going off and being probably one of the only humans ever to explore outer space, and it was a great ending. If you have a chance, if it ever shows up on Netflix, I'd watch it.
Oh yeah, sounds good.
So, it was really hard for me to narrow down my favorite discontinued TV series to just 2 series, but I managed to do it for my 2 favorite TV series of all time. The first one was Breaking Bad. Unsurprisingly, it's universally loved as a show. Everybody, when it was out, was completely raving about it. It was almost cult-like in how people would push this show on people who wanted nothing to do with it. And if you look at it, the premise doesn't seem like it would be too terribly engaging. An old high school chemistry teacher and a junkie dropout decide to make meth together. It doesn't seem that amazing, but there are so many things about the show that I found perfect. The first thing I liked about the show was obviously the character development. And watching the show over, I've seen the whole series through 3 times, you can really, really see the foreshadowing. Vince Gilligan knew what he was doing when he made the show, because there is obvious foreshadowing in the first episode of everything that happens throughout. Walter White goes from milquetoast, weak, pushover high school teacher to becoming literally a drug kingpin and the most important person in the southwestern United States drug market. And Jesse Pinkman undergoes transformation in and of himself, and then the first episode, they say chemistry is the study of change. There's so many tie-ins watching it through and through. The attention to detail, like John said with his show, is amazing. There are basically no details in the show that are pointless. There's nothing that they say or do that has no meaning. There are no real filler episodes. Every single episode advances the plot in one way or another, and while the first season starts off a little weak, that's just because they're building the characters, they're building the plot for things to come. And every single episode and scene is necessary to the whole thing. Even one episode that a lot of people didn't really like in the later seasons called The Fly, where they're trying to...
I love that episode.
Right, I love it too. Because the storytelling and the character development in that episode, in and of itself, is enough to make it, essential to the plot. They just can't get rid of any episode. And the last few episodes, I binge watched in a row. I'm glad I caught up with it, after the show was, initially canceled, because I couldn't bear to stop watching, after Ozymandias, which was a perfect title choice for the episode, by the way. I couldn't stop. It was such an on the edge of your seat. I have never experienced something like that really before. And, I just, it's one of my favorite shows of all freaking time. Literally, I know it has been beat into the ground. Watch the show if you haven't already.
But it's beaten to the ground for a really good reason. The show is fucking amazing.
Watch
and
it.
Going back to the previous episode...
You, right there, listening to it right now, who's like, I'm not actually going to watch it. It's just, it's whatever. It's not... No. You're going to go right now, stop this podcast, and go watch Breaking Bad. Come back to this when you're finished.
And if you've already...
Don't stop the podcast. Keep listening.
And if you've already watched it, go watch it again.
After the podcast is
But
ended.
Going back to the previous episode, how we were talking about cinematography, that was another show where, while you're watching Breaking Bad, it's artistic. And just how they film it, how the story progresses, and just how well written the characters are. The show is damn near a work of art.
I love Vince Gilligan's writing. Every time when I was watching The X-Files and I saw an episode written by Vince Gilligan, I was like, yes! Because I knew it was going to be amazing.
And they always were.
Yep.
It was, I think that's definitely a good pick.
Yep.
One of my picks is Dexter, which I actually just got around to watching this year. Even though I think it ended, 2012, 2013?
I'm pretty sure it ended this year.
It ended pretty recently. But I digress. That show is phenomenal. And I'm sure everyone knows it, but Dexter is a serial killer who works for the Miami PD in the forensic department, and he uses their cases that they're studying to hunt down and kill other serial killers. Basically, his adopted father trained him to be, as a kid, Dexter had those urges to kill, and he couldn't help it. It was just a weird thing that he couldn't figure out. And his adopted father decided, well, if we can't fix you, we'll just make sure you don't get caught. And at least you're doing something good with it. And trained him how not to get caught, how to fight, and who to kill. And it created really interesting internal struggles later in the story, because he, there'd be someone who he needs to kill for, they're going to rat him out or something like that, but he can't because they didn't do anything wrong. So it would create a very interesting turmoil. And alongside with that, he kind of had his alter ego, his Clark Kent, where he was holding a relationship and a family and he slowly found himself getting emotionally invested in people, which was new for him. He actually got a girlfriend as a front just to seem normal, but inevitably ended up actually truly having feelings for him. And as the show progresses, you find yourself getting attached to these people that he's getting attached to. And it creates a really interesting storytelling. And also, all the kind of quote-unquote villains that he goes up against. Every season has kind of a main villain. All of them are so phenomenally cast. I forget his Gao. I forget his first name.
I don't remember. I didn't watch much of the show.
But something Gao or whatever. Anyway, all the villains were phenomenally cast. And the show is just amazing, and I'm really happy I finally got around to watching it.
Well, surprise, motherfucker! I didn't like it.
You didn't like it?
Yeah, and I don't want to shit all over your world or anything, but I literally couldn't watch Dexter. I watched part of the first season, and I just thought it was a generic formulaic TV drama. I didn't really like it, so that's all I'm really going to say about it, because, you know.
It took me a good, 4 or 5 episodes to get hooked. Once I did, I was hooked.
It's going to be kind of hard for me to describe what I don't like about it, because I disliked it so viscerally that I could not, determine a specific reason why I didn't like it.
I have no side of this because I have never seen an episode, so...
Really?
Except the last one. Actually, I know how it ends.
The only episode of Dexter that you've watched
was the end because of my parents. Yeah, so, it kind of sucks, but...
Yeah, I definitely enjoyed it, and that's definitely shot its way up to my top picks ever. But, John, what's your second?
All right, my second...
Dexter's Laboratory.
What I will say before I say anything is, there's a bunch of animes and cartoons that I would actually put on this list, but there's too many I couldn't pick from, so I'm actually going with one of my only sitcom favorites that has officially come to an end. And that's How I Met Your Mother, which, for anyone who doesn't know the show, which, I mean, if you don't know this, which is surprising, is the show's about, it's a guy telling his 2 kids the story of how he met their mother. And the shenanigans that is...
Yes, go ahead.
I'm sorry, guys. These 2 idiots are just being stupid. And how,
Yes, the story of how... The story of what? How he... what?
Okay, anyway. And the shenanigans of his friends and stuff before he met his kid's mother. And it's a story, and you have characters... Neil Patrick Harris playing Barney. I don't know the names of the rest of the actors, but there's Lily Aldrin, Marshall, Robin, and Ted. Ted is the main character and the narrator. And it's pretty much just stories about all of them throughout, several years of them just going about life. And it was a really good, funny show. A lot of feelings in it, a lot of heartbreak, a lot of happiness, a lot of laughter in it. And it was actually one of the few shows that actually I felt like it mattered. Like most sitcoms or whatever, they're stupid, they're whatever, haha. But this one actually mattered in the story and the mystery about who the mom actually was. And
have you ever seen The Office? Have you ever watched it?
No, I have never watched. I've seen a couple episodes. I've never
because as far as sitcoms are concerned, I think it really hits the nail on the head that you were saying with How I Met Your Mother, with the character development and caring about the characters and all that.
Yeah.
Except it doesn't have a laugh track, so I can actually watch it. I can't watch a show with a laugh track. I really can't. None of the shows that have a laugh track that people say are amazing. I could never get into Seinfeld or How I Met Your Mother, or any of those, even though I hear people say that they're amazing, I just can't do it.
And I'm kind of for the same reason. I keep constantly saying, I've just been binge watching The Office because it's such a brilliant show. And speaking of sitcoms, and it's just... I'm kind of picky on my sitcoms, so
no, I can't specifically comment on How I Met Your Mother because I have only watched a few episodes, and what I have seen, it was actually fairly interesting and funny. But I can't get past the laugh track,
Yeah, I see. Or that's where I differ. I can't. It's whatever. It's
And that's just a personal opinion.
I will say, How I Met Your Mother has one of the greatest casts ever.
Yeah.
I love their cast.
Yeah, Neil Patrick Harris is a pretty.
And
cool
they all
guy.
work together so perfectly.
Yeah.
You can tell that offset, the cast has a great chemistry.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And it just shows.
It's definitely been one of the more unique, one of the best sitcoms to come out. Because, I mean, you look at so many of the last few years that have come and gone.
Oh man, sitcoms are so bad nowadays.
Yeah.
They have no artistic integrity.
But, I mean, you look at How I Met Your Mother, it ended, I think, within the last year or two. But
it was
it's
recently.
But it started over, like, almost about a decade ago. And it lasted. And it was every bit of good as every season was just as good. And the ending it was a little, I didn't really like it that much. I mean, I did, but I'm so floppy on this ending because the feelings were there so much, and I hate feeling things. It makes me sad. It made me sad. Like, I didn't cry. I'm not like that. I'm not that. But
I heard that the ending was really emotional.
I bet you
was.
cried.
It's okay, you can admit it.
You can admit it, John. It's okay. We're all friends here.
Hey. Shut up.
Stop crying, John. It's okay.
Alright.
No, I actually didn't cry, but they're just being assholes. Anyway, who's next? I don't know.
I have Kleenexes if you need them. No, don't hit me.
Alright, Tony, what's your second pick?
My second pick, and this was so difficult to choose because there are so many shows that I love, eventually came down to between Hannibal, the TV series, and The X-Files. And I picked Hannibal. And I'll tell you why I picked Hannibal.
Tell me.
Hey, I will. I think it was one of the most masterfully crafted TV shows that I have ever seen in my entire life. The beginning seemed a little formulaic. It seemed like it was going to be a killer of the week drama thing, which I don't necessarily have a problem with. Like I said, The X-Files is one of my all-time favorite shows. It all depends on how well it's done. But as the show went on, it evolved into something that I don't really think I've ever seen in a TV show before. The plot was ethereal and grounded at the same time. The casting choices were fantastic. I think Mads Mikkelsen as Hannibal Lecter is one of the best choices that they have ever made, and I was pretty iffy about that at the beginning because of how much I absolutely loved Anthony Hopkins as Hannibal in the movies. It's a different Hannibal. It's definitely a different Hannibal. It's a different story, by the way, if you haven't gotten into it.
Question on that, because I've never actually watched the show,
Go ahead.
but I've watched all the movies.
Mhm.
Is the show canon? Does it all
The
flow
show
together?
is a separate canon. The show follows the same characters that are used in the novel Red Dragon, but it does not follow the movies whatsoever. Part of the reason that is because they didn't have the licensing to Clarice Starling's name from The Silence of the Lambs.
Mm-hmm.
The show begins I think it's years before the events of Red Dragon. Hannibal is not arrested yet. You see him wearing a person suit that Mads Mikkelsen does surprisingly well. You know, like, he plays a very convincing sadistic psychopath. But like I was saying, the casting choices were phenomenal. Will Graham was beautiful as a protagonist. You know, you relate with him in so many ways, even if you don't. And his chemistry with Mads Mikkelsen is top-notch. I love Mads Mikkelsen. And the cinematography, because I am a huge cinematography nerd, if you caught on from the last episode where I was talking about The Revenant so hard, it seems like as the show went on, they started taking more and more risks with the cinematography, and they started doing weirder and weirder shots, and I think it really paid off. The third season, which is its final season, was shot in such a beautiful way, it almost felt like cinematographic masturbation. Like, the cinematographers were just doing things for the sake of just doing them, and I feel like the plot may have suffered a bit because of that. But as the show descended more into madness, as Will Graham descended more into madness, it really felt like everything in the show captured that. Like I said, with the filler episodes, there are none. There are no filler episodes in Hannibal, and I hate filler episodes with a passion. There are none. Everything is important in progressing the plot. It kind of towed the line in the first season a little bit, like I said, with the Killer of the Week drama and all that. But it really came into its own about Season 3, and the finale of Season 3 is the best episode of television I have ever seen in my entire life. I will say that straight up. Go watch Hannibal. Even if you're on the fence about it, just go watch it. I mean, it's a good show.
Yeah, that's definitely been on my list for a while. I just haven't got around to it. But but if it's definitely in your top picks, I'll definitely check it out.
Oh, it is my favorite TV show of all time, I'd say.
So it's one of those things where, going back to that canon point, it is its own separate thing, but it could still technically be tied in. Like, it's one of those things where they just tell a separate story that they could be the same thing, but they could also not.
It is a different take on the source material, I would say.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
gotcha.
It is a different take on the source material. Like, in both of them, Hannibal Lecter ends up in jail. In both of them, the Red Dragon is a plot point. But there are different interpretations of the same source material. This Hannibal Lecter does not act like Anthony Hopkins' Hannibal Lecter, and he does not act like the one in the books. This Will Graham is a markedly different character than the Will Graham in the books or the other movies.
Okay.
So, yeah.
I think that's why I'm on the fence, because Anthony, like you mentioned, Anthony Hopkins is just Hannibal to me.
You can't look at it as the same character. You have to look at it as different interpretations of the same character, because this character is very different and should be judged by different standards. It's more like apples and oranges than like Hannibal Lecters and Hannibal Lecters, you know?
Yeah. Okay, I can appreciate that. I'll have to check it out.
Yeah.
My second pick is a show that I've been watched for years and just ironically even helped me through things. Scrubs. Going back to sitcoms. I don't know. Can you call Scrubs
It's a sitcom?
Yeah, and if you hadn't chosen it, I should have.
It's a phenomenal show, and honestly, it's one of the most real shows to me that I've ever seen in my life, because every problem they deal with, every reaction to the problems, while exaggerated, are real and understandable. And it may be over the top exaggerated, both in the characters, they're all wacky and crazy, and the weird things they do are crazy. But at the same time, they're all just slight over-exaggerations of what we all go through and how we all react, in a very comedic yet emotional presentation. Sorry, go ahead.
What I would say about Scrubs and why I like it so much, and one of the biggest things is, if you look at all the although it is a comedy, if you look at all the other hospital shows, they save everyone.
Do you know what's funny, though? A fun little tidbit for you. They actually always had a doctor on set, so that way everything that happened in Scrubs was real.
Yeah.
And in colleges for to get your medical licenses and whatnot, they would actually show episodes of Scrubs over any other episodes, because they're actually real and everything they do is legitimate.
Well, that was what I was getting to, is if you look at any other, like, house, how they save everyone. Everyone gets saved. Or whatever, Grey's Anatomy, or what, pretty much everyone gets saved. People die in Scrubs. Like, it's real. Like, and they show the heartbreak and the emotion the doctors go through when they lose someone.
Yeah.
And they show how real it actually is. Instead of like something like House, where every single person that goes in that's in that show survives.
And it kind of reminds me of that episode where, due to, I forget what caused it, but Dr. Cox messed up on something and inadvertently killed 3 patients. And he went on a drunk binge for like weeks, and they all tried to get him out of it because he felt so guilty.
I remember that episode perfectly. It was the one girl that wouldn't shut up, and I really found her annoying. And well, the thing is, she came in and she was dying, and so they took all her organs and donated them to the people in the hospital who are all crashing and needed transplants. but it turns out she had rabies, and all the people who got the transplants died. You remember that now?
Yes.
Yeah.
I remember. Well, yeah, wasn't it that annoying hypochondriac chick where
Yeah.
she kept thinking something was wrong or something like
And
that?
actually something was, and turned out she died.
Yeah. And it's really funny how they had the weird plot twists like that. Like, who could have saw that coming kind of thing. And it happens all the time in real hospital settings. And
It was a human show, I think is the best way to describe it.
Yes.
It really was. It's a lot like I said, The Office in those regards. It's a very human show. Everything that happens, you feel like it could happen to you. You know?
yeah, and it's just really funny saying an episode like, or a show like Scrubs, how zany and weird it is one of the most realistic and relatable shows I've ever watched in my life.
Life is strange, dude. Life is strange. You can't, just because it's zany doesn't mean it's not realistic.
And there's so many life lessons, along with another old show that I've been watching recently, Malcolm in the Middle.
Yeah.
If you ever get around to watching that again, it's another show where, as stupid and weird as it is, have so many life lessons and real situations and real reactions.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's those kind of family comedies that people just don't really appreciate as much as they should because of how much you can get out of that. Like I said, ironically, I mean, hell, that show Scrubs has taught me life lessons that I couldn't have got anywhere else. As weird as that sounds, but
it was a really good show, and they tried to come back with more after initially ended, and it didn't go so well. But
even like the last season still wasn't horrible, but it definitely was not what it should have been.
Unintentional sequels, they usually suck.
Yeah, even
upcoming episode.
Yep.
Yeah.
Anyways, so yeah, I think those are all of our picks. Right
now,
any notable mentions? We have a little bit of time, or other ones.
Well, I would say is, I mean, there are a lot of shows going on that I personally love. Like, there's one that's currently canceled, but it's supposed to come back on, and it's an anime. It's Bleach. One of my favorite shows, one of my favorite animes of all time. But
are they bringing that back?
It's supposed to be brought back. So technically, if it was for sure canceled, that would be on my list. But seeing as from what I heard, it's coming back, I can't put it.
And speaking of cancellations, I do have to comment on the cancellation of Hannibal because it was canceled. Well, a lot of people feel prematurely, considering how universally loved and adored by critics it was. I think it has like a 98% on Rotten Tomatoes, really. Not to say that Rotten Tomatoes is the be-all, end-all of movie critiques, because it really isn't. A lot of the times they're dead wrong.
Mm-hmm.
But
do you know why it was canceled?
I do. Because it was on NBC. The National Broadcasting Channel. Right, like, it's funny to think about, because in the episodes, they have such graphic violence in it. Such graphic violence. There is one scene where two people are blood-eagled, and if you don't know what that is, it's where you sever the ribs from the spine in your back and spread them out to look like eagles.
Oh, yeah.
The Vikings did it. It's really, really grotesque. And I almost laughed out loud because it remembered that it was on network television. They blurred the nipples on the people whose ribs were splayed out. Blood was everywhere. They blurred the nipples. But thanks, NBC.
Really?
Interesting little tidbit. Death metal Viking-based death metal band Amon Amarth actually has a song called Blood Eagle on their album Deceiver of the Gods. So,
and the TV show Vikings, which is not canceled, otherwise it would be on my list, has a very prominent figure receive a blood eagle. It's really, really grotesque.
I will be hitting up YouTube later.
But anyway, any other picks or seeing as we're all nerds, and this is one of the biggest cancels that should have never happened, is Firefly. Should have never been canceled.
Never seen Firefly.
Really?
I saw the movie. I've seen the episodes. It's
phenomenal show.
Yeah, it is.
But at this point, there's no. As much as everyone wants it to come back, there's no point.
Yeah, it's going to really.
If they try to come back, it's going to be like the sequel. It's going to be bad. And I think Joss Whedon and Nathan Fillion have gone on record like, we would love to, but there's no point.
Now, I mean, but like I say again, there are so many shows I could put on this list that I really miss and really love. Most of them are all animes or cartoons for me, but
The only one on that list would be Rick and Morty, but that one's still going. Thank God.
well,
I hope it goes on for another 20 years.
Oh, jeez, Rick.
one of my favorites is Metalocalypse, which is hopefully not over yet. If it is, I'm going to be highly
Let's hope.
disappointed.
Man, that one that one would have made it on one of our lists if we knew what was going to happen.
It would have been on my list. It didn't. I don't care about you two. It would have been on my list. That's my show, my list.
If we know what
It isn't
is
yours
going to happen.
shows, you fuck's face.
Your
It is
speed.
everyone's shows.
Hey,
Cheer the show.
yeah, well, it's my favorite one. So.
All right. Well, I think that is all for this episode.
Yep. Thanks for listening, everyone.
Tune in whenever we upload the next one.
And
We'll let you know.
yeah, go see it on YouTube or something.
See ya.